Good morning everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be doing part 2 of my two-part video about what my first year was like, and I'll just be explaining a bit of my modules that I had in second semester and any tips that I might have for you, any resources that you might need. If you haven't watched my first video, please go watch it first because it has a lot of additional information and information about the 2-year subjects that I had that I won't be repeating here. So just go watch that one first and then click right back onto this one. So let's just get right into it. Okay, so AIM I already explained in my first video, but I'll just touch on it again because most of the vet students have it in second semester, whereas I had it for the whole year. So AIM is just academic information management, and it is basically about computers. They teach you the basics of navigating the university's website, and they make sure that you can work with Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, I think. So really not difficult. I know that it was a lot more work for the other vet students who only had it for one semester, and that's simply because they had to do the same amount of work as we did in a shorter time frame. But still not difficult, it's just more annoying because it's more work. So yeah, if you want more information about that, you can just go and watch it in my first video. The next subject is VPL. We also had that as a year subject. We didn't have much class for it for the second semester just because there were a bunch of things that always got in the way since we only had class every second week. Sometimes there would be for that specific week a public holiday or an event at the university or something like that, and we ended up actually having very little class in VPL in the second semester. But it was a semester where we went to onderzoek for the one day, and it was really fun. We got to interact with the lecturers and the students there, and we could really just enjoy it for a day and sort of remember what we're working towards and be reminded that we are actually still vet students despite all of these other random subjects that we have along the way. Then the first really second semester subject that we had was Pt.2 165, and that is applied calculus. Now, this is a subject that we were prepared for from about the time when I was just going to open days. They would mention how difficult math is for vet students, and I was always confused because I was really good with math in school. You have to be good with math because it's one of the main subjects that they focus on for your admittance. So I didn't think that that could be an issue. But the thing with applied calculus is that, like physics and chemistry, it's one of those things that you either get it or you just don't. So a lot of people easily make the connection between simply having a formula put in front of them and answering questions about that to actually applying it to a scenario, which is what you need to do for WTW. So a lot of people struggled with that, but if you do get it, it is honestly not very difficult. Luckily, I got it fairly quickly. It took me a while to sort of make the connection, but once it was there, it was pretty firmly established. So WTW, you have 4 classes a week. We had a tutorial every week, and in which we may or may not have a class test. So they wouldn't tell us, and if we don't have a class test, there is no attendance, so then you could have skipped, which isn't good because the tutorials are actually really helpful and can help you a lot if you're struggling with the work. But you might have a test, and then if you miss that and they pick up that you miss a tutorial and you have no sig note or anything, you might even lose your exam entrance. So really don't take that chance, just go to the tutorial. There is a textbook for WTW. I personally never used mine. I remember that we needed it for the tutorials, for the questions that we had to prepare beforehand, but I would usually just borrow a friend's textbook because I always forgot mine. So I never used mine. I definitely never used any of the information in there that explained any of the work. I really just used the notes that the lecturer gave us in class and the examples that we discussed in class, and that was more than enough for me to be fully prepared for the work. So WTW was definitely the most difficult subject that we had in second semester, just because so many people struggled to put the two together. So they would quite often give you a scenario like a population. It would always be a population. I don't know why, but they would tell you that there's a population and the initial population is this many and it grows this quickly, so give us a formula. And then they would ask questions about that formula, where a lot of people are used to getting a thing of initial value blank and growth rate blank, and you know, they get the formula from that, where they struggle to actually, from the scenario, realize what they're asking for and what they want you to do with the formula. But if you can figure that out, then it's really not that difficult. Second subject is BME120, and that is biometry, which is basically statistics, like we had in math in high school. And it is actually probably the subject that I struggled the most with for several reasons. They messed around a bit with our year. I don't know if they still do it or if they used to do it, I'm not sure. But they basically had 4 or 5 or 6, I don't know, they had a lot of lectures, and they would give us a different lecture each lesson, which made it really confusing just because it's different teaching styles, different learning styles. I would have 5 pages of summaries from the one lesson and then half a page from the next 4, just because they work in different ways. So it was really difficult because all my notes were incomplete. I wasn't sure what they were talking about. Sometimes the one would get behind and the other one wouldn't know, and then there would be gaps. So it wasn't presented in the best way, but in the end we did have enough resources to be able to figure it out, but I really hope that they change it for future years. So for BME you also have 4 classes a week, and then I think it is a 2-hour tutorial a week, and attendance is compulsory. Unfortunately, our tutorials also didn't go great because our main tutor wasn't, I don't know, he didn't seem to have any idea what he was doing. All the other tutors were amazing and you can ask them questions and they would be so helpful, but the guy who had to present everything just had no idea. So really struggled with the presenters of this lecture. But there is also a textbook, and I definitely recommend that you get it. It's not required in the same way that textbooks are required with their codes in the first semester. I explained the codes in my first video, so if you don't understand what I'm talking about, go watch that first. But the textbook is really the thing that explained everything to me, because it was really thorough in that it had pages and pages of explanations where they word for word explain to you what they want and what they mean and how the scenario gets translated into the right formula that you need to be able to get the answer that they want. Which is really helpful because, same as with calculus, it is applied. So it is really difficult to have all these random symbols. There are so many symbols. I'm still confused to this day with all those symbols. So there are so many symbols that you can use in so many different ways for so many different results. And it's really difficult to take all of that and then pair it to the right situation and the right scenario that they might give. So it was difficult to put the two together, you know, the application thereof and simply knowing the formula. But the textbook was really helpful in that because it really focused on that part, on giving you the formula and explaining how it related to the situation, how this symbol and that symbol and these values. So the textbook was really helpful for that. The examples were also really good. They really properly put into motion of everything that had been explained that far. Another thing that really helped me through this course was our one lecturer. She was so amazing because a lot of people were struggling with the way that they were presenting the module, and in the end, because of all the complaints they were getting, she basically went, okay, she understands that this is the way that the lecturers need to do it, but she's just going to tweak it a little bit. So she would basically do all of her work with amazing flow diagrams, mind maps, everything, amazing summaries, do two or three proper examples that has everything in it, and then also explain the other lecturers' work, all in her one class a week. And it was so amazing. So happy that she was there, because in the end it was her summaries that got me through the semester. Another thing that is really important is to work through old papers, because even though the textbook is really good with its explanations and its examples, it is a lot easier to answer the questions in a test if you know the way in which they will ask it. So they will ask the same questions in both the textbook and the test, but they will ask it in such different ways that you're honestly so confused and you have no idea what they want. So I definitely recommend reading through the textbook so that you have an idea of what's going on for a test, and then you work on old papers so that you know how to apply what you know. So that is really what helped me. Old papers, our amazing lecturer, and that textbook. Okay, the next subject is actually a really fun one, and that is GTS 161, which is genetics. It's a really interesting subject. It was also one of the few subjects that we had that really sort of went in the veterinary direction, because you have so many subjects like calculus and statistics and chemistry and physics that you never really use as a vet, and you know that, and it sort of just feels like there is no point. So genetics was sort of a really nice thing to remind you of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and just sort of reminding you of the direction that you're actually in. So I really enjoyed it. We really had amazing lectures. We had classes twice a week, and then once every 2 weeks we had a tutorial, and then after the tutorial we had a short quiz. There is also a textbook for genetics. I remember that I did use it a few times. It also doesn't have a code, if I remember correctly. And even though the lecturer's notes are fairly sufficient, they are very thorough with their notes. They give a summary, and then they also make notes on the summary as they give the lecture, and then they also upload the summary with the notes. So you're pretty set with the lecturer's notes, but the same as with many of the subjects in the first semester, if you want to do well, use the textbook as well, because it gives you a more in-depth understanding and you will be able to explain it better if you have a better understanding of it. But if you really just want to pass and you're fine with any mark that's above 50, then the lecturer's notes are more than enough. Okay, our last subject it's a really fun subject now that I don't have it anymore. And that is ZEN, or Zen 161. And it was actually a really nice subject. It's animal diversity, so it was also a bit more in the direction of vet science. I think a lot of us were really disappointed that it wasn't completely vet sciencey, because we were like, it has animal in the name. But it is a really good subject. We did a lot of evolution in it, which is really interesting to me. I find evolution so fascinating. And then for the practicals, we did a lot of animal classification. So orders, phylums, classes, all that stuff that I don't need to know anymore. All of that. And the practicals are really difficult. So for Zen, you have 2 classes a week, and once every 2 weeks you have, I think, a 3-hour practical or a 2-hour practical. I'm not sure. I can't remember. And the practicals were a source of great stress for all of us. They're really fun once you get there, but the preparation was quite hectic because it is literally, you need to sit and memorize it. So hard. It is literally parrot learning, and it's the names and characteristics. That's all that it is. It's names and characteristics of species and classes and orders and phylums, and it really goes into detail. So it's a lot of work to memorize. Every practical we would have 20 to 30 pages of pure facts, so you can't just sort of go in there and thumbsuck your way through the test. It really doesn't work. So we would have the practical where they would go through some of the main points. Sometimes, I remember we had, I have arachnophobia, pretty severe, and we had a practical about arachnids, and it wasn't that fun, and we got to like hold spiders and stuff, so I didn't at all. I emailed the lecturer beforehand and I was like, listen, this is not gonna happen, and you cannot keep me out of this practical for that reason, so is there any way that I can do both? So I literally sat in the back, didn't look on any of the pictures that they had on the screen, and didn't go and touch the spider and the scorpion and all those gross things that they had in the front. But the rest of the people did, and it was really fun. There were also worms that you could eat, so that was interesting. So the practicals are really fun once you get there, but it's a lot of work and people stress about it a lot. But it was really interesting, really nice work. This is also a book that you need the textbook for. It's the same textbook that you needed for MLB 111. So if you had it in the first semester, you will have it for second semester, and you do need it. Because even though the lecturer does give slides with his notes are really a basic summary, and they are not nearly enough to get you through a test. And he does tell you this several times, so don't pretend that you don't know. Okay, so what I always did, and worked really well for me, was that I would just read through the textbook. Just plainly read through it, didn't study it, didn't memorize it because it is way too much, and then I would study his notes. And then if I would get to a part of his notes that I'm not sure about or I don't understand, I go and read it in the textbook again, just so that I have the understanding of the textbook and I have it all sort of put into a small little ball of information in the notes. So you definitely need to combine those two to be able to pass. For Zen, it is also the only module that we had throughout the year that we had a practical exam in, and it wasn't a difficult exam at all, but the preparation was hectic because it is all the characteristics of all the species and all the classes and phylums and orders and everything that we had done over the whole 6 months of the semester. So it was a lot of work, a lot of memorizing, so if you don't stay up to date with your practical work, there is no way that you'll be able to make it through the exam. So the exams aren't very difficult because, like I say, it's parrot work. They can't really try and catch you out with a question. It's plain and simple, is this animal in this class? What are the characteristics of this class? They can't really catch you out with that. So they ask it pretty straightforward, but if you don't know it, there's no way that you'd be able to just figure it out. So basically with all of it, all the modules, if you stay up to date, you're pretty good. If you struggle with anything, get help as soon as possible, because if you leave it to the last moment, it'll quite possibly be too late. So don't leave it for then. But rather late than never, I will also say that. I only got a chemistry tutor for my final exam after I had already failed 2 semester tests. And I did scrape through, barely, but I did. But I think it would have been a lot better for me and my health and everything if I did it a lot sooner and I didn't have to panic about it at the last moment. So this video was obviously a lot shorter than the first one. Second semester was a lot more chilled. I had a lot less subjects. And the subjects that I had a lot less classes and practicals than the first semester. So it was really like a breather after a hectic first semester. But it's still a lot of work and the subjects are really interesting. And I really hope that all of you guys will enjoy them, all of you vet students and future vet students. I can't wait to meet you one day, to see you on campus, and I really hope that if you have first year ahead of you, that you will enjoy it and that it will be as amazing for you as it was for me. And I hope you guys all have an amazing day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys!